Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. Brought to you by Grove Street FM and hosted by Town Manager Bart Warner. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Good Wednesday morning. It's November 29th, 2023. I am Bedford Town Manager Bart Warner and want to welcome you to this edition of the Best Little Town Podcast. This broadcast is designed to keep our citizens, our customers, and heck, those folks who are just interested in the world's best little town, apprised of what's going on at the decision-making level, and we do that by reporting on the actions taken by council at their regular meetings, and I also attempt to provide some maybe expanded insight to some of those actions as well. Of course, if there's ever anything else you'd like to hear about in this format, please let me know directly. You can email me at bwarner@bedfordva.gov, or you can call 540-587-6022, which rings directly to my desk. If I'm not there, please leave a detailed message, and I will get back to you. But I wanted to jump right into the actions taken last night by town council at their meeting. It was maybe not the most interesting agenda at first glance, unless you are really interested in the operations of government. The new business agenda was basically full of things that are integral to the operations of government. I'll be honest, maybe they could even be bureaucratic. The biggest thing was a presentation of our fiscal year 2023 audit report by Brown Edwards and Company. They are an independent auditor who is engaged by the town to basically look over our shoulder and make sure we're doing things correctly in terms of our finances, our operations, and our systems that are designed to make sure things happen in a secure manner. I'm pleased to report that they did present a clean audit finding for us. They indicated that the town is in very good financial shape and that we are in full compliance of all applicable rules and regulations related to that. And this might be a good opportunity for me to explain a little bit more about the town's finances and the way they're structured. Of course, as citizens, we are all paying taxes for certain funds, and those are represented by activities in what we call the general fund. Basically, those are services such as police, public works, planning and zoning, certain administrative functions that are kind of essential to the operations of the organization and that have a cost associated that otherwise can't be paid for except through taxes. We do our best to keep that tax burden low. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the broadcast. But essentially, these are the services that we are either obligated to provide or that the community in general decides that we should provide. And we cover those costs by asking you to contribute to them, typically through real estate taxes, property taxes. There are other fees and certain things associated with that. Basically, those are the activities that on their own do not generate a profit. It's typically something that we have to pay for as citizens. We also have two other funds, however, that are business-type activities. Perhaps the most visible is our electric department. The town of Bedford operates its own electric utility, which is somewhat unusual. There are only about, I want to say maybe a dozen in Western Virginia like us, where the local government is actually your power company. The roots of that go back to the turn of the 20th century when the then town of Bedford went into the electric business, probably because the private sector wasn't geared towards doing that at the time. Since then, we have continued that service. We pride ourselves on a very quick response time. Ideally, the power never goes out, but on the rare occasion it does, we get it back really quickly. We have a really great staff dedicated to that. They're very responsive, very dedicated to our customers. So that level of service is something we're proud of. Our goals with the electric utility are always reliability, customer service, and efficiency. Of course, the way we pay for those costs is we run that like a business. We charge you for the services that we provide, much as you would experience anything else in the private sector, like retail sales or services such as other utilities, like your water utility, which we no longer provide, or your internet service. So think of us in those terms. The electric department as a business is able to generate what is technically a profit. However, our goal with that is to make sure that we are using those funds to support the operations of the department. And I'll go back to those three key areas of focus: reliability, service, and efficiency. A lot of what we do with the money generated in the electric fund goes back into the system. We have about 20 miles or more of main transmission lines between the town and Big Island, and that's our service territory. And then there are individual bits of infrastructure we maintain there. We're constantly monitoring those. They age. They have to be replaced. We have a replacement program. And we're also looking at some other major initiatives in the future that I want you to be aware of. One of which is at the Snowden Hydroelectric Plant, we have currently 3 generators that provide, on a good day, up to 10%, well, on a regular day, maybe 10% of our overall power load. There's also space in that plant to add 2 additional generators, and we're looking at the possibility of doing that. The good news is if we're able to increase generation there, there's more locally generated power. Ideally, if we can do it using current technology, it's more efficient and we get more bang for our buck. But it's also a pretty expensive undertaking. And we will be presenting that in our capital budget coming that we present next year, so keep an eye on that. Another major initiative we're considering is expansion of our other green energy, which is solar power generation. The town operates a solar farm currently on an old landfill site. We are looking to expand our solar capabilities, and we're always targeting opportunities for that. The other thing I want you to be aware of, this relates to the electric department, but it's also a much broader project in scope, is the fact that back in the 1980s, the then city of Bedford undertook a major downtown renovation, buried a lot of power lines, redid sidewalks, did some beautification efforts that have held up very well. However, now we're 40 years later, and we're discovering that some of that infrastructure needs to be revisited. So another major initiative that we're going to talk about in the future is replacing some of the underground power lines, looking at the sidewalks in this area, and possibly expanding some of those efforts that were undertaken back in the 80s. Again, we do have plans to fund that hopefully will not impact taxes or electric fees too much. And Mary Zirkle, our very capable Director of Community Development, is exploring grant opportunities for that. So, as a sidebar, an explanation of how we run the electric department, wanted to make you aware of those future plans. We also are somewhat different than other localities in that we have a separate solid waste fund. Now, obviously, that is related to our garbage collection efforts, but those services also are broader than just curbside pickup. We have to maintain and monitor our landfills, which are now closed, but still need attention to make sure that they don't create problems in the future. We provide spring and fall cleanup services where you can put pretty much anything on the curb, and D.W. Lawhorn and his colleagues in Public Works will take care of that. We have that as a separate fund, and that was set up back in the 1990s. A lot of communities provide that service as part of their general fund, which I mentioned previously is those services that may not pay their own way and are covered by tax funds. I will tell you candidly that the solid waste fund struggles to be self-supportive. Our fees come close to capturing the cost of that service. on a cash basis, but we do have to make some considerations amongst funds to keep that whole. And that's another thing I'll mention is that the general fund, the electric fund, and the solid waste fund are somewhat intertwined. The electric fund, oftentimes we do take money from that and transfer it to the general fund to provide some relief on the revenues there other than taxes, to help us with some projects that otherwise we may have trouble finding funding to undertake. And then oftentimes, and that's the case currently, the general fund will transfer funds to the solid waste fund to keep that whole. What I will report, and what Brown Edwards reported last night, was that essentially all three of our funds are in good shape. We're meeting our targets. In addition to keeping things going at an optimal level, we also have reserve policies in place in all funds that are funded in general fund and electric fund. On solid waste, we're almost there in terms of capturing the true cost with our fees. So if you're a citizen of Bedford or if you do business here, you can rest assured that financially our community is in very good shape. And that's not my opinion. That is what was stated by our independent auditors. That report will be posted on our website shortly, along with other previous years, and we're always happy to receive your comments or your concerns about that at any time. So that presentation from Brown Edwards was the first item of new business last night. The next item related to the Business, Professional, and Occupational Licensing Tax, otherwise known as BPOL. The background of this is the BPOL tax is something that's authorized by the Commonwealth of Virginia for towns and cities to collect. And essentially, it's a matter of recovering some revenues that help us with expenditures that take away the tax burden in other ways. Right now, the general fund in Bedford is pretty much funded largely with a burden on residential customers. And the tax burdens, particularly real estate, personal property, and those sorts of sources, are paid by the people who live here. What we've done for the last 10 years is we have not captured a lot of revenues from non-residential sources, primarily retail businesses. At the time that Bedford reverted from city to town status, we had a BPOL tax of 20 cents per $100 of gross retail sales for all businesses that were located in our boundaries. At the time of reversion, the council decided to grant what was essentially a holiday from that tax, and it hadn't been charged since 2013. The idea was that we would provide that relief to our businesses, and there would be some sort of mutual benefit both to the community and to those businesses. But I will tell you, as the economy has changed over the last 10 years, and we've seen increased pressure on our residents to pay the tax burden, we are looking at ways we can expand and share that burden in a more equitable manner. And with that in mind, last night, council decided to reenact this BPOL tax. However, not at the level that it existed back in 2013. The new tax that will be assessed will be on retail businesses with gross sales of $3 million or more on an annual basis, and at a rate of 10 cents per $100, as opposed to the old rate of 20 cents. This is something that we probably will monitor in the future, but again, the idea is to spread a little bit of the burden in the general fund away from the residents and more to the business community, but we're happy to talk about that, and we want to make sure we do that in a sensitive manner that doesn't cause problems. So that action was taken last night. That BPOL tax will be reinstated beginning January of 2024. The other action taken last night related to revision and adoption of a procurement policy for the town. The Commonwealth of Virginia requires the town to acquire goods and services, dispose of goods, and be competitive in prices under a specific set of guidelines in the state code. Basically, we have to be responsible with your funds in everything we do. Part of the procurement policy relates to certain quotes that we have to receive for any goods and services. The idea is to get the best price, often the lowest price, for the goods that we purchase on your behalf. But it's also to ensure fairness, and it's also to encourage people who want to do business with the town to submit bids. Previously, we had a few competing policies amongst different funds and operations. Our town attorney, Mike Lockaby, and our finance director in particular, Ann Cantrell, spent a lot of time consolidating these to make them more efficient. And again, these things probably might not be terribly exciting to the average listener, but they are necessary housekeeping items that we have to undertake from time to time. Also, another thing I want to report with regard to the town's finances are our long-term strategic initiatives. The auditors mentioned the fact that we're in good shape. Some of that reflects our current planning as well. There's been a lot of discussion about the possibility of the town taking on future debt. Right now, we don't really have any projects or plans to do so. And fortunately, again, we're in a unique position, but a very good one. As of right now, the town is scheduled to be completely debt-free in all funds as of July 1st, 2027. Now, the good news there is tempered a little bit by another financial factor related to reversion. As part of the reversion agreement, the city and town agreed to share revenues from the state that were based on some calculations related to schools, and the town receives $750,000 annually based on that agreement. That money goes away on June 30th, 2028. So part of our goal in getting rid of our debt was also with an eye towards replacing that $750,000 of revenue. And we think that with the strategy we have in terms of debt, non-residential revenue growth, and frankly, a little bit of belt tightening, when that money goes away in 2028, ideally you as a citizen or business will not see any impact at all. And our auditors recognized that and also gave us credit for it. Last night, council members raised a few items on their own. Councilman Bruce Johansson inquired about the Bedford Middle School project, and I was able to report that I have spoken with developer Dave McCormick. We are working on a timetable for completion of that project that's fairly specific. Of course, anybody keeping track knows that he's run into some delays with supply chains and other factors, but the performance agreement says that that project is supposed to be completed by March of 2024. Seems unlikely that that's going to happen, but we are trying to work with Mr. McCormick to find a realistic timetable for when it will happen. Another thing that council had requested was that Mr. McCormick provide tours of the facility for them so they can see the project firsthand and see the progress. And I reported that he is agreeable to that, and those will be scheduled after the first of the year. On another happy yet deferential note, we noted that the Liberty High School girls cross country team recently won a state championship, and we had wanted to formally recognize that group as soon as possible. At this point, we don't have a date for that. We have to coordinate schedules with the members of the team and the coaches, and of course the holiday season makes things a little complicated in a good way. But did want to make people aware that Town Council is extremely proud of that achievement by our hometown high school and does intend to recognize those girls and their coaches for that state championship. And that might be a great segue into another series of announcements I want to make about activities related to the holidays here in the town of Bedford. We are embarking upon a big weekend in the community with several events that I want to mention in case you're not aware of them, and also so you might make plans to participate in them. The Bedford Welcome Center is currently hosting its 15th annual Festival of Trees. That event runs through January 5th. Nicole Johnson and her colleagues do a great job of bringing in people to the community. It's an event where a lot of organizations have several different Christmas trees on display, and there's a contest of sorts where you can vote for your favorites, and you do that by contributing money, which goes to a lot of these organizations and helps fund their charitable activities. It's also just a really fun, really festive event, and again, Nicole and her colleagues there do a wonderful job with it. Also want to report that the National D-Day Memorial will be hosting its Flames of Memory event on Friday, December 1st from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Admission is free. Basically, this means after dusk, the gates will be open and you can drive around the memorial, and you can actually park and walk around. And the D-Day Memorial staff places votive candles, which are representative of all the people who gave their lives in conjunction with the D-Day battle. Knowing that fact, the beautiful setting, the tranquility of the night and the lights, it's a really, really impactful event, and if you're around Friday evening, we would certainly encourage you to partake. Also, the annual light display at the former Elks home will commence on Friday evening as well. Even though the Elks, the Fraternal Order of Elks no longer operates that facility, and it is a privately owned concern, the current owners still interact with the community and put on that light display, which is popular and known throughout the region. That commences this Friday evening as well, and it will run through the holiday season. Saturday, December 2nd is a huge day for Bedford. The first Saturday in December always is. And it kind of kicks off with the Bedford Area Family YMCA's annual Peaks of Otter Classic 5K run. That's conducted on what is known as the Loop. That's a basically 3-mile course that consists of Whitfield Drive, Oakwood Street, Longwood Avenue, and Peak Street. Coincidentally, it's almost exactly 5 kilometers. You do have to jog a little bit in the Hampton Ridge neighborhood. And as someone who's participated in that in years previously, there's a little hill there that'll get you if you're a runner. But it's a really neat event that kicks off the day. Later that morning, the annual Christmas parade will commence at 11 o'clock a.m., and I'm pretty sure about that time because I checked Facebook before I wrote it down. That will take place in Centertown, Bedford, on what we refer to as our normal parade route. The staging will probably begin earlier than that. Heather Alto and her folks at the Business Coalition have done a wonderful job with it. North Bridge Street, Main Street are full of several great places to catch the view of the parade. It also circles around to Washington Street before it completes its course. And then the community Christmas tree lighting event will take place at Centertown Plaza beginning at 3 o'clock p.m. with the lights being turned on at the tree at 6 o'clock p.m. That's a very fun and festive event. Jonathan Hayden takes a lot of responsibility for that, along with our Public Works Department and our Electric Department. He's responsible for the decorations. And Peaksview Dental also provides sponsorship for that. So it's a really interactive, great, fun community event that draws a lot of people. So if you're in the town of Bedford, there might be a little bit of traffic, but it should be a fun and festive crowd, and we encourage everybody to participate. One final administrative note, which was mentioned last night, relates to our curbside solid waste pickup, and that's the thing I want to pass along today is that citizens currently receiving curbside solid waste services who are interested in opting out of that services can do so, but there's a 6-month time period established for that. So if you're currently paying for our curbside services and decide that you want to opt out for a 6-month period beginning in January, you need to let our utility billing department know that by December 1st. Also, as a reminder, the fee for curbside pickup is for all services, including leaf pickup. Customers who do opt out are not eligible to receive any of the curbside services offered. Once again, my name is Bart Warner, and I have the great privilege and honor of serving you as your town manager of the world's best little town. The purpose of this is to provide some, maybe, hopefully more in-depth information into the operations of your town government. We're always happy to receive your input, your suggestions, and hey, even your criticisms. If there is something on your mind, please let us know, because oftentimes we may not know about it. And sometimes other people may have exactly the same concerns you do, and they will be appreciative if you share that with us. I hope everyone had a very wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Wish everybody a safe and festive observance of the upcoming holidays. And as always, I consider myself very blessed to be here and to serve you, and I hope that you are blessed as well by your connection with the town of Bedford.